Let's take a look at some charts on Link from this week's article on Brave New Coin. So Link is a decentralized Oracle network that has quickly become a backbone of DeFi applications, networks, exchanges, DEXs, all that sort of stuff. Link is involved in interoperability between chains, connecting data. It's a great thing for the environment and the ecosystem. It's probably a little overhyped, a little too much memery, but the market doesn't care. The market is FOMOing and frothing into Link because of all this PR with all this exchanges. Link Marines keep buying up the book on any dip, and price discovery continues. If we look at the contract transaction counts, we see, again, DEXs, DeFi-related stuff, other exchanges, other data providers. Just shows that Link is becoming sort of an indispensable part of the crypto ecosystem. Link has had several partnerships with pretty much anybody who's anybody. Google, Oracle, Link, Intel. It's hard to know the details of these partnerships unless you actually look at the contracts, if they're publicly available, if it's just some Pinterest, which is funny, if it's just some PR thing, if it's other companies wanting to get into the crypto bandwagon, if it's Link trying to just improve PR continuously. They've been a PR machine. It's hard to know. They sort of fit a niche and a use case that's needed and wanted, obviously, while at the same time just being an absolute PR machine. If we look at the Link token supply, 38% of it is in circulation. Most of it is not in circulation. Smart Contract Limited, the company, the holding company or whatever, parent company for Link, is selling about $1 million a month of their stash. I still don't know what this node operator reward stuff is about. It's probably proof of stake type related eventually. I don't know any of the details. I've been unable to determine any of the details on that stuff. Here's just a visual of when those Link holding tokens are being sold. You can see they wisened up post 2018 and began the slow drip. The slow drip is always more tolerable to the market than the let's sell 5 million a clip on one day. It's usually bad. Now this is probably incorrect in that they didn't sell this amount on one day, but they moved it and then it was sold over time. What they're doing now is they're selling 500K at a clip, and I can see that in the wallets for the Smart Contract Limited Link holdings. If we look at transactions per day and average transaction values for Link, both are way, way up. Transactions per day have doubled since the previous all-time high earlier this year. And any on-chain activity should be bullish for the token. It just says demand, demand, demand. And when supply isn't being released at a high rate and demand increases pretty substantially, price should go up, and that's what we're seeing. So that's bullish, obviously. Active addresses in the fill here have quadrupled since earlier this year. They're at 8K, which isn't necessarily a lot, just outright, but from where it came from at less than 200 earlier in like mid-2019 to 8,000 is quite a jump. NVT has been kind of all over the place, hard to take seriously for Link, but anytime NVT gets to a low or a local low, definitely more bullish. It's an inverse metric of economic utility, so you want this to be declining, you don't want this to be rising. You can see that the market cap is basically kind of flat with on-chain activity here. So you can see that since a couple weeks ago, on-chain activity really caught up with the market cap, and NVT's just flattened out. So it's definitely more bullish now, actually, than it was a couple weeks ago, just based on market cap versus on-chain activity. If we look at Google Trends, pretty astonishing that over the past few weeks, Google Trends has surpassed the previous all-time high of Google Trends. You really don't see this with anything right now. You saw it with Tezos a little bit a few months ago, but in general, anything that's pushing all-time highs is going to be pushing all-time highs in Google Trends. So there's lots and lots of press in general about Link, lots of people looking up Link, lots of searches, lots of SEO type stuff with Link in it. Switching to technicals here, we have the 50 and the 200 EMAs, yearly pivots, VPVR, volume profile, volume, and RSI. First thing that caught my attention when I was looking at this was the bearish divergence here. So we have a higher high in price, a lower high in volume, a lower high in momentum and RSI here. All this says be careful going long up here because bullish momentum is waning. And when you see a bear div into a yearly pivot, typically that's a strong sign that there's going to be some sideways reversal down here. And if there's not, you know, the bear div will get bigger if there's a third drive into R5 here on the yearly pivots. So one way to play this would be, let's say I'm 100% long right now. You could cut 30 to 50% of it, see what happens. If it goes higher, then you cut the rest of it, because you're assuming that this bear div is eventually going to come home to roost, and there's going to be a pretty decent pullback. It's also very far away from the 200 EMA, which typically is a sign that it needs to chill a little bit. There's not much volume support up here as well relative to $4 area. So this could easily just rotate all the way down to the 200 EMA, this R1 yearly pivot, the $4-5 VPVR range, just because there's not much volume up here. Looking at the cloud loves it since April. It's been a just clean, perfect textbook Kumo breakout with a bull trend. So you had your entry here, and then if you missed that entry, you got in at this Kijun bounce, and the next Kijun bounce would be around 650, 680, something like that, where the Kijun is sitting currently. And there's a bit of a C-clamp growing here, so another way of showing that bearish divergence. So getting back to 680 wouldn't be a bad thing as far as for continuation. If we look at the 1 year MA, which is this green line here, and 5 times that MA, which is this red line here, we get a general sense of where Link sits historically based on averages. You can see the previous highs in price were caught pretty well by this indicator. All the lows were caught pretty well as well. You know, anything in the green is a buy, anything in the red is a sell. So it's pointing to 1337 as basically the next ultimate high. The fact that it's past this midline here gives me confidence that it's actually going to try to push for this high eventually. It's not going to just stall out. I don't have a lot of data on this, but in general, when I'm looking at these MA multipliers, if it can make it past the midline, it goes all the way, like it did here. If it can't make it past the midline, it typically reverses. So I think this actually goes to 1337 over time. I just don't think it's going to happen on the next move up. I think it's going to need some consolidation first. This is the Link BTC chart on the daily here. Again, 200 EMA, pitchfork, volume, RSI, VPVR. So the pitchfork is just the trend channel with specific rules, and it just says this yellow line here is the middle, and it's going to want to return to that throughout the trend, which it has these outliers in the pitchfork. This pink purple stuff is be careful zones, be careful being long, be careful being short, resistance, support, that sort of thing. So you can see it bounced on the midline a few days ago pretty strongly. There's no bearish divergence here. I do expect this to just chill out a little bit with the bear div on the USD pair especially. Where is it here? You know, the bear div here, this could pull back harder than BTC, and then this Link BTC pair would pull back a little bit. This might just triangle out. I mean, that's what I'd expect at this point, just like it did here. Kind of just triangled out and then moved up again. So certainly a possibility. It's definitely on the high side of the pitchfork. Another reason based on trend that just needs to relax a little bit. And then looking at Link ETH, it's had this rising wedge for, let's see, a year and a half, a year, something like that, whatever. It's been a while and it hasn't reversed yet. It's still above the 200. With the ETH 2.0 stuff potentially coming, I do expect it to regain some value here against Link as people rotate into staking for ETH, just as they did for ADA. So I do expect this to roll over within the year, probably down back to 01 or 005. Probably not much lower than that, but I do think that there's going to be some rotation from Link into ETH. But overall, man, all-time high for everything. Can't be bearish when you see that.